Welcome back, boys and girls, wizards and witches, elves and hobbits. We have a great show planned for you tonight, and I've got Courtenay Turner back, one of our favorites. So everybody welcome her. How are you, Courtenay?
I'm doing well, thank you. Yeah, things are crazy as ever, but yeah, all good.
I can't even keep up anymore. It's just like the craziness. You just have to reach out and pick one. So I was scrolling and I saw a couple of your tweets this week, and I was like, oh man, this is so crazy. So one was about dark elves, which we are going to learn. Um, and the other one was about Game B, which is like the co-opting of religions for like technocracy. So we are going to get into that and have some fun poking at a couple. What do you call them? We have this like cast of characters now that we're looking at that are fleshing out our, the digital prison for our mind, right?
Yes.
And they are constructing this edifice and this kind of thing, matrix basically for us to live in, and they are making the matrix right now. They're making Terminator come true. All of your favorite sci-fi movies are on the brink right now. And another thing that got me fired up about this topic was listening to, so we went on Sam Tripoli when we went out west on our
Okay.
media tour, and then the very next guest they had was Isaac Weishaupt, and he did a really good talk about the Dark Enlightenment, which we have been meaning to cover. There's just so many.
I just went on his show and did a whole thing on Dark Enlightenment because we were both on Donut Show together talking about it.
Oh, on Isaac's show?
I just went on Isaac's show, but
okay.
Isaac and I were on Donut Show talking about Dark Enlightenment. And then he was like, I want you to come on my show now and do it. I think it's going to air in like 2 weeks. So.
Okay, now we're all in the club now. We're all on the same page. This is weird, and it's something that needs to be talked about. So welcome, and I'm glad that I am in such good company with you and Isaac and Donut and all those guys who I really respect, Sam Tripoli. So here we go. Where do you want to start? I kind of want to start. Tell us about the characters, because it's almost like having a pack of villains or something, like a card pack. So let's pull out the first one. Who would you say? Maybe like Peter Thiel.
Yes. Okay. So I think Peter Thiel is a great starting point because he's kind of an overlap. So what I've been outlining, and I actually did a show titled this, that the dialectic between Game B and Dark Enlightenment, building the technocracy, right? That's kind of how I see it. And I think what they're both doing is they're creating a noosphere. They have different terms for it, but that's essentially what they're doing. They're creating a noosphere, which is pushing us towards the technological singularity, right? That's what Kurzweil says. The singularity is nearer, 2045. And so I make the joke, this is not to be insensitive, but, they're operating through left and right. And that, which I think are kind of false constructs, but that's how they're operating, what they're operating through. That's the banner that they're wearing, the veneer. And so I make the joke that, they don't care if you have mommy issues or daddy issues. They've got a blue or a pink comfort blankie for each of you. And if you've got both, they'll give you one for that too. They'll give you the synthesis essentially. But that's kind of what yeah.
Well, I just wanted to put another one more element to that is fantasy. So they have their dialectic, and then they also have their delusions, right? And their fantasies that they are incorporating into this. And Black Mirror did a great episode about that. It was like all Star Trek themed, about the guy who owned people in his own game, and he, kidnapped them and put their consciousness into the video game that he can control them. And I just want to throw out this random tweet that I saw today that kind of like encapsulates everything that we're going to be touching on. It said, I talked to a clinical psych over the weekend who said fiction should be a controlled substance. He works intake and said most of the psychotic breaks he talks with are fueled by movies and TV shows. Ingesting hours of narratives every day has consequences not everyone can bear. So I think that kind of touches on what you were saying about the dialectics and then the delusions. So keep going.
Yeah. Well, I think ultimately it comes from their worldview, which is not rooted in reality. It's
Right.
essentially a nominalist worldview, right? So they think that the first principle of Hermeticism, there are eight. They don't talk about the eighth one, but the eighth one is actually care.
Hmm.
Um, but the first one is mentalism. So all is the mind,
Hmm.
right? This is like Descartes, I think, really codified this, cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am. So it's like a new thought is kind of the rebranding of theosophy and the new age. And they really take this kind of to the nth degree. And I think all of these come from that new thought. It's just, again, different banner. Like one has the patriarchal kind of authoritarian, disciplinarian kind of veneer, and the other one is the Divine Mother and more mystical and spiritual. But
Hmm.
both of them have the same kind of, esoteric underpinnings.
Hmm.
So that's the kind of how I would start. But there's overlap with Peter Thiel on both of them.
Okay.
So, like Game B. So I'll give you just a really brief rundown of Game B because most people are not familiar with Game B. People are more familiar with Dark Enlightenment because a lot of the Dark Enlightenment characters are
Hmm.
surrounding Trump, right? They're Trump
Yes.
administration. Yes. So I think that's kind of come to the forefront. A lot of people are.
It's becoming more medieval, and then when you put these fantasies in there, it's very it's getting like Merlin wizard almost because they
Yes.
see Trump as some kind of king, like a CEO, philosopher king. Uh,
Yes.
right.
He's going to run the GovCorp.
Right. So continue.
Yes. So a lot more people are familiar with the Dark Enlightenment currently, which is great. I think we need to be aware of Dark Enlightenment. Game B has been operating for actually quite a long time, so it's not new,
Mhm.
but a lot of people are not very familiar with it. I presented a theory I think I've pretty much been vindicated in my theory by Andrew Cohen, who he wrote in Manifest Nirvana about this, and he didn't use my words. I basically said that the intellectual dark web was an influence operation for Game B.
Mhm.
And he doesn't use those words, but he basically says that it prepared the landscape for the conversations and for the public to acquiesce. So I think he essentially said it's a influence operation. So Game B it came to the forefront around 2011. Jim Rutt is considered like the grandfather of Game B.
Does B
And
stand for anything?
no, it is an
It's just
alternative.
like game A. Like, okay,
Mhm.
game A. It's
So
like
it's all
plan
so
B.
yeah, exactly. So
Okay.
like you're saying how this is all kind of rooted in their delusions and it's kind of a game theory.
Yes,
Everything's gamified.
because
Yes.
they think that we are in a simulation and they think they're just playing the villain character, right? Grimes has said that, and Elon has
Yep.
said that.
Yep. Exactly. So
Like,
they're trying to figure out like what is the best way to play this game. And
mhm.
so the concept of game B is that where I call it the technological age of Aquarius. Essentially what it is. They say that game A, which is what we're in currently, is very rivalrous and it's competitive. And it's very, individual oriented, kind of like the age of Pisces, right? It's focused on the individual, it's competitive, and they want to move into a collective, collaborative. They call it a collective intelligence. So they don't say noosphere. They talk about the collective intelligence.
Mhm.
And so that's what they want to move into. And they had a movie. It was called Initiation to Game B. You should check it out. I think you will
Okay.
find it very interesting. It's like an 18-minute movie.
Initiation
But
into game B.
Initiation to Game B, yes.
Okay, so that's a
And it was
magical thing already.
yes, and it
Right.
was done by Stoa, the Stoa network, and the Stoa network hosts a lot of these Game B characters. They do the dialogos, which I think is also interesting because if you look historically, right, the origins of dialogue is from the dialectic, which was Socratic dialects, right? They were, and that was discourse, right? Socrates was always questioning and usually challenging people.
Mhm.
But then it's kind of morphed into dialogue means consensus now. And you hear them, that's pretty, I mean, they don't outright say that, but they always refer to, my peer who I respect. And they use the term sense making, which I think is code for consensus making,
Mhm.
essentially. And I think where the major shift, I don't know this is where it began, but a major shift was really with the Delphi method. This is, military experiment that was done with group dynamics in order to create conversations that create consensus. And that this got morphed into the education system with social emotional learning. But okay, so they do dialogos on the Stoa network, and it's a lot of these Game B characters. And so that's their theory. In this Initiation to Game B movie, they start off in this very, they romanticize the indigenous populations, so they're always kind of propping them up. There's a author, Tyson Yunkaporta, who has written several books on, the indigenous populations and kind of glorifying them over us. And they start off in that kind of a world. It's a very neoplatonic kind of pagan society. And they say that was the original game. And then we move into Game A, which is what we are. And they say Game A is going to reach a meta crisis where the crisis is our birth, though. That's Barbara Marx Hubbard says that. A lot of these people are actually disciples of Barbara Marx Hubbard. And so this is what they say. We're, going to basically hit the crossroads. It's doomed to fail because it's too rivalrous and combative and competitive. So we need to move into Game B, which is non-competitive. And they also say the Game A is very extractive and exploitative. However,
Game A, Game A is reality, like what is happening right now.
Yeah, this is our society currently.
So, real life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Game B, but I just want to highlight that they say how Game A is very extractive and exploitative, and they say that Game B won't be. Game B doesn't exist yet, by the way. It's a theory, but they're going to extrapolate the technology from Game A.
Okay.
To Game B. So, but somehow that's not exploitative. That's not, that's not extracting, but they're taking the technology. They're going to move into Game B. So Game B, they say, is non-rivalrous, and it's a new operating system for civilization. That's what Game B is. And it's just, right now, it's an idea, it's a concept. So, okay, so now we have this, and the film really outlines this, but then, and then into the film. Yes.
Is this where accelerationism comes into place? They want to...
So accelerationism is more in the quote-unquote right, in the dark Enlightenment. I would say that they're much more in favor. They kind of took the, a lot of their premises from Nick Land, who was an accelerationist. And they had left and right accelerationism, but there's not really a whole lot of difference. I mean, essentially they want to take capitalism to the accelerationists. They want to take capitalism to the nth degree. They think it's doomed to fail. So they essentially want to accelerate it, speed it up. And so part of the way to do that is with technology. So everything has to ramp up as fast as possible. It's a very apocalyptic kind of a mindset. But Nick Land is crazy. He's a crazy character. He has an article. You can find it on the Wayback Machine. It's no longer available. It's called Hyper Racism. And this hyper racism is essentially what Elon is doing. We have to move beyond racist and anti-racist into hyper racism, which is essentially positive eugenics through genetic selection. So we're going to, use CRISPR-Cas9 and whatever kind of genetic mutations to breed for the best. Yeah. So that's his hyper racism. But he was a proponent of this what was it, cybernetic culture research unit.
Okay, so now you're talking about Nick Land, right?
Yes, that's Nick Land.
Okay,
we'll go back to
let's go back to Game B, because I do want to talk about that, because it just keeps getting more crazy and crazy. And the elf ears and how it turns into, it just bleeds into sci-fi, fantasy, medieval delusions, and
Yes, crazy. Okay. So the Game B, so they propose that we're going to have this new operating system for civilization. So this is why I kind of say that it's the left-hand path, because they're more like techno-socialist utopians. They think they're going to create this utopia. And they say it's a new operating system, but it doesn't exist yet, but we're building this concept. And there's Jim Rutt wrote back in 2018, this was a journey to Game B. He keeps updating it. And he says that the proto Game Bs will emerge around 2045, which I thought was a very interesting timing because that's when the singularities mirror. And it's also when the AI World Society is supposed to emerge, right? Because that's centennial of the UN. So I thought that was interesting timing. But Jim Rutt, back in 2011, he was a chairman of the Santa Fe Institute. He's a very interesting character, very bright guy. He's been in the tech startup world, you know, for most of his career. He was the CEO of Network Solution. He was on the ground floor of something called Evolutionary Software. He was actually part of like a venture capital fundraising meeting for what became T-Mobile.
Is this Gordon Hall? Who's this?
No, this is Jim Rutt.
Jim. Okay.
Jim Rutt. And he coined the term snail mail.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So he was because he was working on this evolutionary software company. That's actually how he made his way to the Santa Fe Institute. So he's like an MIT grad, which is also interesting with all the tech connections. I have not mapped it out yet. I really need to, but I'm wondering if there are any connections to Epstein because of Santa Fe and yeah. But I haven't looked into that yet. That's just, you know, like possibility. But yeah, so he was at the Santa Fe Institute and that's where he met Jordan Hall. Now, Jordan Hall is also a tech startup kind of guy. He was involved in like, you know, the origins of like MP3. They were both part of like this big data. I forgot the exact name of the company, but it was like kind of early, you know, crypto kind of stuff, blockchain type of stuff. So that's where they met. And they started brewing this idea and they brought in Brett Weinstein because they were bringing in evolutionary biologists because that's part of the, you know, concept of this evolutionary software. And so they started these meetings. They were called the Stanton meetings. And this is outside of Virginia, Stanton, Virginia is outside of DC. And they were having these meetings to try and create what they call the Emancipation Party. The Emancipation Party was very much like a Bernie Sanders platform. You know, like you can still look up the reforms. It was, in Game B, they call it transpolitical movement. And I think this is also a lot of what's going on right now is you're seeing this dialectic, you know, this left-right kind of dialectic, but what they're really presenting is this narrative. And I'm not saying that there's not, you know, a flaw in the left-right paradigm. You know, like George Washington warned us against it, and you know, there's obviously dialectical games they play in it. But what I'm seeing is they're calling it a transpolitical movement, and I'm seeing a very conscious movement to prey on people who recognize that there's a problem with this duopoly system, to create a transpolitical movement of independent party. And that Game B calls it transpolitical. So that's but traditionally, a lot of these people all come from the left, and they're advocating for platforms that are very similar to like a Bernie Sanders, you know, socialist platform. And that's what this Emancipation Party was. And so when you look on it, they're advocating for a UBI. They want like universal health care. It's a very socialist platform. So the way Jim Rutt explains it is that he could get, the boomers were all in. He said Gen X, he thought he could corral them, but they weren't quite in. And he said, but the millennials loved the platform. They loved the reforms that they were advocating, but they were such anarchists that the idea of a political party was anathema to them. So we can't really, you know, run a political movement without the millennials. So they kind of like, you know, they kind of like siloed this idea and they were like, okay, well, you know, move on. But one of the members of these Stanton meetings was Thor Mueller. And he said, you should really keep the name Game B for branding. And so they went forward with this concept of a new operating system for civilization. And the way Jim explains it is that he was kind of like a hard scientist. You know, he studies complexity theory, systems theory. We can debate about the hard science of that, but that's his perspective. He's a hard scientist. And he says some of these other members were a little too woo-woo. And so you know, so they split, but they reconvened in 2014. To focus on this Game B project. And so Game B has, when you look just even on the roster for who did the film, it's like a very long list of characters. Joe Rogan has platformed almost all of them.
Okay.
And most of them are in the tech
This
space.
is the initiation into Game B.
Yep.
Okay.
The initiation to Game B. So most of them are, so there's, oh, that was one other thing at the end. They have like this NFT coin at the end of the Game B.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they're going for a tokenized kind of civilization. So then that's part of the concept. They call it like donut economics, which is, or like sacred economics. Charles Eisenstein, he's kind of in that mix too. So a lot of them are disciples of Barbara Marx Hubbard. There's we talked about the cosmoerotic humanists, right? The three that make David Temple. Yes. So they're all involved in Game B. This is Zach Stein, who was actually inducted to the Club of Rome last year.
Okay.
There's Daniel Schmachtenberger. And a bunch of them, this is another company to kind of look out for. They used to be called Neurohacker. They keep changing their names, which is all fascinating to me. The people's names and the company's names, everything keeps changing. But it was Neurohacker. It's now called Qualia Life. And Qualia Life, when you look at the board, it's got like 60 people.
That sounds like vitamins or something. Qualia.
Yeah, they're a longevity.
Very innocuous.
Company, yes, it sounds innocuous, but longevity, what I've found is usually, and I'm sure on the surface it's innocuous and, they might have good products. I don't know. But longevity usually is code for like transhuman adjacent.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I found.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Life extension, chip yourself, consciousness in the cloud.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this company was started by James Schmachtenberger, who's Daniel Schmachtenberger, the other 1/3 of the cosmoerotic humanists, also a disciple of Barbara Marx Hubbard.
Okay.
And so his brother started this company. So Daniel Schmachtenberger is part of it. But like when you look at the names on this list, I mean, Deepak Chopra is on it.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of the evolutionary leaders are in it. A lot of Game B is on this board for Qualia Life. But and then who's the other one? Kenneth Wilber, of course, right? The Religion for Tomorrow and his theory of altitudes, which is based on Claire Graves' spiral dynamics and Abraham Maslow's like hierarchy of needs. But it's also based on the chakras, if you actually look at the colors.
Mm-hmm.
Kenneth Wilber is that's a whole nother can of worms, but he's very involved in all this with this integral theory.
So
he's very Yes.
Can you
describe
for me describe
a lot.
their version of utopia? What?
Okay. So they have this idea that they keep talking, their buzzword is decentralized.
Okay.
And so when they talk about decentralized, it sounds great, except that I keep reminding people that H.G. Wells said that the conduit to the world brain would be the decentralization of information institutions.
Mm-hmm.
So back then, that was like the academic institutions. What is it today? Today, it's the internet. It's technology. And they're very much proponents. This is where the overlap is. They're very much proponents of the network state. Now, they claim that they're not so in favor of the network state per se, and I think it's because they're still pending approval on Balaji Srinivasan's website. I don't know why, what's going on there, but essentially what they're advocating is the concept of a network state.
Okay.
And even Balaji Srinivasan, in his book, The Network State, he talks about how it's the whole concept was predicated on Peter Thiel's seasteading. Seasteading was this idea that he put $1.7 million into, where you'd have these like cities in the middle of the sea, in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
Very reminiscent of like Terramar. With Ghislaine Maxwell.
Okay. Seasteading instead of homesteading, or it's seasteading.
Exactly.
Okay.
Seastead.
Mm-hmm.
And so it didn't go over so well. It didn't take off. And so now he's become a huge supporter of Balaji Srinivasan's network state. And there's a chapter in Balaji's book on seasteading.
Mm-hmm.
But Balaji Srinivasan himself says the purpose of the decentralization is for later re-centralization. So he even says that. So
they're following an alchemical pattern where they dissolve it and then they build it back up. And okay.
Got it. And it's all, I mean, they're all rooted. I mean, most of them are disciples of Barbara Marx Hubbard. Barbara Marx Hubbard was she was like a grandmother of the New Age movement, intellectual disciple of Teilhard de Chardin, who talked about the noosphere, also, proponent of Abraham Maslow, who taught her about the Psychian networking, which she said was instrumental to the super sex movement. Mark Gaffney, who's the other part of that, David Temple, the cosmoerotic humanist, he's connected to this Game B movement. And he is, what he's doing right now is just, I know we talked about this one time with the Eros Mystery School, but he's now a guru to Aubrey Marcus, who is doing radical monogamy. And radical monogamy is, Gaffney calls it extended monogamy because it's exclusive.
Wait, let me guess. Wait, just let me guess. Radical monogamy is when you stay with the same person, but they're allowed to go and do whatever they want, but they're still with you throughout a lifetime or something like that.
It's very close, very close.
Oh, okay.
It's expanded monogamy. So it's not monogamy between two people. It's between more than two people.
Oh, okay.
I know. So Aubrey just did a podcast with his wife and this other person they brought in. And they talk about that. So the three of them are in an exclusive relationship, and it's hard to watch. Honestly, I really feel for the wife. I think that he's really preying on her trauma, and it's it's her choice. It's not for me to judge, but it's hard to watch. But yes, they've decided that this is radical monogamy. It's not polyamory because it's exclusive, and that it's actually really pure and sacred. This is like a very divine type of love.
Haven't the Mormons been doing that forever? And
Mormons, it's very different though, because the Mormons, it was much more about when the spouse dies, it was about like taking care of the other women in the community. It was a very different kind of concept. It wasn't like, let's be in relationship with multiple people simultaneously and we're all committed to each other. Like that wasn't really what it was about.
Okay.
This is, yeah. This is, yeah.
You mentioned, well, speaking of Mormons and Christianity, and how does this play in with Game B? Because I see these clumps forming, and it's really frightening. So I see like evangelicals teaming up with the Zionists against more like Catholic Orthodox going the way of like Islam. What I mean by that is I think that the red pill stuff is like a Trojan horse to get traditional Christians to treat women more like they do in Islam.
Mm-hmm. And Yarvin would be a huge part of that.
And so you see these tribes forming, and each of them has like a Christian thing attached to it. And you were saying that this Game B, part of that subversion of it is they use things that are already established, like a church, a cross, a symbol, a prayer, a word, and they strip away the meaning of it, and then they just use that as like a shell to move their initiative forward. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sort of. So Game B is, like I said, this is a concept that originated, and the intellectual dark web kind of percolated it. They were, building this idea, doing a lot of dialogues, and it's a big group, and it's not a monolith, but it's a group of people who they definitely have a shared vision for this, what this new operating system for civilization will look like. There's a concept called civium, and this came out of Jordan Hall, who is one of the founders of Game B, right? Him and Jim Rutt. And he came up with this idea of civium, which is moving out of a city into a civium. However, it's I wrote a whole Substack article on this. It's just another type of
civium.
A civium.
Okay, so like a little nation state, or like a Sparta, or something like that, like Athens.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
That's exactly right. But his concept is that the cities are problematic. We want to move out of the cities, but it's still it's still like a nation state. It's still like and it's still connected through technology. You know, they talk about all these different technologies, like they have a concept. It's based on like the Dunham principle, where it should be 150 people or less, because beyond that, that's where you need bureaucracy. So they really want like these small kind of, but it's communitarianism because it's all done through technology. So Jordan Hall, who's got this concept of the civium, which is very much supported by the Game B, thought leaders, and so this civium concept. I was going to add one more thing. I mean, there's a lot of different components, obviously, to Game B, because they're operating like everywhere from economics to legal. They're creating a whole new operating system for civilization. So, but this civium concept, I think, is really very deceptive, because it's under this. It's essentially like a 15-minute city or smart city, but it's out in nature. But Jordan Hall recently converted to Christianity last year.
Okay.
And so now most of Game B are
Courtenay, no one would ever use Christianity to do like underhanded, ulterior motive things.
I know, it's
unprecedented.
Yeah.
I mean, look at all the recent converts and how like obviously sincere they are.
I'm just waiting for Russell Brand and Joe Rogan to do sermons on Christ consciousness.
I mean, even Diddy is like, he's gonna have some Bible studies soon. Like,
yeah. So it was not initially a Christian concept at all. Like Jim Rutt is a very secular atheist. The rest of these characters are all in the New Age. They're very spiritual. They are not Christians. But Jordan Hall is now converted to Christianity a year ago, and I really, of course, I had like my antenna, and I was like, oh no. But I was like, give him the benefit of the doubt. I was like, I have to listen to him talk before I make any, It
really sucks because, repentance is kind of our thing, like turning your life around, and you were bad and now you're good. But it's like that can be used against you. And even some of these like really bad influencers say, I've heard them say, I'm not going to say name, but he says Christians are stupid and they'll believe anything I say. If I come in the name of Christianity, they'll just eat it up.
Yeah. So. Yeah. So, and I see the people taking advantage of that. And so that's why my antenna was like, oh, Jordan is going to be, and Jordan Hall, I mean, he's like Mr. like ayahuasca and DMT, and this crowd is very into like Burning Man. This is not your typical Christian kind of crowd. They're all into the New Age, and like I said, they're disciples of Barbara Marx Hubbard, most of them. So, or they're in that like complexity science space, which is, I would argue, also not very Christian at all. So I was kind of intrigued. So I started listening to a lot of his podcasts and a lot of his recent discussions. And the one that really struck me was that they were talking about how Ephesians 4 teaches collective cognition. And I was like, I am not a theological expert, but I don't think there's anywhere in the Bible that teaches collective cognition.
Was that like a hive mind?
Yeah.
Oh,
well, so Game B talks about collective intelligence, right?
Yeah.
And so he used the term collective cognition, which is basically, and this was the other one. So he did this, and again, here's the Peter Thiel overlap. So he's been giving lectures. There was one 4 years ago that was called, it's the Startup Societies Foundation, and it's held in Prospera, which is, Honduras, Peter Thiel's company, which again, talking about changing the names, right? The subsidiary of Prospera was Vitalia. And it used to say a city where death is optional, right? It's all about longevity and transhumanism, essentially. They've now changed it to Infinita.
Okay.
So it's a new, but they were doing these presentations at this, Startup Societies Foundation. And Jordan Hall gave one 4 years ago about Game B startup societies. And that's like almost an hour. It's like a 50-minute. And he goes through the civium concept quite extensively. Really recently, maybe a few months ago, he talked about the network state. And it's a very short video, maybe 11 minutes or 12 minutes, talks about the network state.
Mhm.
And, this is very much kind of aligned with his whole concept of civium and with Game B, creating these network states, and very much using the libertarian banner, which is what Peter Thiel tries to do. Although I don't think it's even, I have problems with libertarianism that are separate. I mean, mostly because it's derived from Kantian philosophy. So it's essentially nominalism, and it's not rooted in, realist metaphysics at all.
Mhm.
But that's a whole different issue with what was going on here. But they do, I don't think that even what people traditionally think of as libertarianism is aligned with what they're doing. Like, what they're just using it for marketing purposes, right? The target audience. And I think they're using it to try and cast a wider net because, like, they feel like, oh, maybe the people who aren't quite happy with what the Republicans are doing, not quite happy with what the Democrats are doing, we're going to cast, we'll get these people. I think that's really, it's marketing. But the end of that video, he talks about liturgy.
Oh, okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so he essentially talks about this concept of liturgy, and he's essentially saying that we should use liturgy for basically communitarianism. So he's using this umbrella, this concept, a religious concept, to try and as a banner to lure people into this technological, I call it a technological immanentization of the eschaton. And that's why I say it's two dialectics, it's two sides of the same coin that are ushering us in towards that, because both of them are operating under a Gnostic premise where they're trying to create heaven on earth. So,
well, I mean, we do that in a sense that part of participating in the sacraments is trying to have the mind of Christ.
right.
We have our distinctions also. We're not all one consciousness.
And you're not using technology to connect you all.
Right. Good point.
That's the difference. That's a big difference. So to me, the way I interpreted it, because I think it was very much couched in Aesopian language.
Mm-hmm.
They have a message for the public, and then there's a message for the initiated. And the way I would interpret it, and this is my interpretation, but I've been watching way too much of these guys, so I kind of feel like I know their lingo. And I would interpret it as the AI cyber Satan, right? That's the God.
Right.
You're being connected under, and that's essentially the theosis. I don't see it as a Christian liturgy.
No.
And he doesn't seem to have a real concept of a Christian. He said he's not, I think he's exploring a Protestant denomination. And that's just one conversation I heard in passing. So I don't know, but I don't think he even has a sense of a specific type of Christianity. It's just like Christianese, which is kind of common of these people. They use that Christian language, but the thing that he keeps doing that seems so antithetical to Christianity to me, and again, I'm not the expert, I recognize that, but is that he keeps using this umbrella. So to me, it's of collectivism, which seems much more aligned with Lurianic Tikkun Olam than it does with Christianity.
And this is Jordan Hall, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what is the liminal web?
Okay, so there was a liminal conference that
has to do with him too, right?
Yes. Yep. That's where I found that some of these more recent conversations, because it was a spin-off from conversations he had at that conference. So the liminal is this term they have. If you go to the Game B wiki, they have a million concepts. So they have like I had mentioned, sense making, collective intelligence. They have all these terms. He actually has he's got something called deep code, which was what he was exploring in order to create the civium. And it part of his deep code writing, it was about sovereignty. He's actually redefined sovereignty. He said sovereignty does not mean, nation states that have, autonomy. And he said it absolutely does not mean that individual can magically make their own decisions. So we don't have free will. That's, I guess, a myth. So he has his own definition of sovereignty, which has to do with responsibility, and brings Jordan Peterson into this conversation, which he said I wouldn't normally do, but in this context, it makes sense. Now, Jordan Peterson is another one, just as a quick sidebar, but who I think is definitely appropriating Christianity for his ARC, Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. And Jordan Peterson is a Mithrian. I mean, he's a Jungian, so Jung was a Mithrian.
Well,
And that is not Christian. So
you saw him just kind of get battered by those atheists on that show. It was like 20 atheists versus,
so staged. That whole thing looks so staged to me.
and he wasn't even like a Christian in the being as a representative.
Yeah.
Right?
No, he wouldn't address it, basically.
Yeah.
He said, I don't have to answer you, which is fine. I mean, I've heard him say that before, that he thinks it's like the most personal thing. I think he's doing it as a cop out, but I get it. The explanation I think was valid. I'm not sure that it's his real explanation, but I'm not in his head. I can't speak to that. But I felt like that whole thing just looked so staged to me.
Yeah.
And then that it was allowed to be like, pumped up in the algorithm. Like really.
Yeah, everyone was talking about that.
Yeah, you're going to condescend Jordan Peterson and and it's going to be populated everywhere. It seems kind of like that seemed a little off.
So we're seeing the technocracy slip in the church's sphere.
Yeah.
Because they have similar ideas about eternal life, yes. Right?
Well, because they're signaling to a transcendent.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah. So they're
and the AI
overlap. Yeah.
The AI will be the God in the end to them.
That's what it looks like to me.
Right.
Yeah. Like a cyber Satan, I would call it. But I mean, the utopia that they're painting on both sides just looks like a hellscape to me. And I recognize that not everybody in this space is necessarily like a maniacal or Machiavellian, psychopath. I think some of them really are idealists. I think, they really, like Jim Rutt, I think he really thinks he's creating the best civilization for society. Well, it's just that.
That's the thing. Do you remember Zeitgeist?
Yes.
And that super city that they built, that looks like crap, man. No one wants to live there. People want to participate in building up their own community. They don't want a starship that you built for them and put them in a little plastic figurine for you to, like a sim. Okay, so these guys are trying to build a good sim city for their little sims to live in, but people in reality want to participate, build things, and they want their own gardens, they want their land, they want to build it up like a village, not spaceship Zardoz or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So it's so the difference of Game B, I think, is a little bit more deceptive because it's created this opt-in kind of, and it's more soft kind of utopia. It's soft technocracy, but it's done more through social engineering, and it's going to convince you this is the best way and it's the moral way. There's something called B Labs, which Game B is a huge proponent of. A lot of these people are all in with, the UN, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, the climate narrative. Nora Bateson's another one who was involved in making the Initiation to Game B video. She's the daughter of Gregory Bateson. She's also a member of the Club of Rome, right? So we've got 2 Club of Rome members who are involved in this Game B space. But B Labs is they have SDG adapters. And there are already over 6,000 companies that are involved in this. Some of the big ones that you might recognize are Ben & Jerry's, who doesn't consider themselves an ice cream company. They're an activism company first and foremost. Specifically say that.
They're activists who make ice cream, not the other. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because that's how they can meet their ESG adapters, like the score on B Lab. They have these B Lab assessments. So I see them as a little bit more deceptive because it's couched in all of this love and light kind of language. So they're very much in that theosophical camp. I think that but yes, now we've got Jordan Hall bringing Christianity into the mix. And so he's doing all these conversations with John Vervaeke and Ian McGilchrist and, really just everybody in that space and having conversations about Christianity. But, it doesn't sound like Christianity in a traditional sense. It sounds very much like a more kind of Christ consciousness type of Christianity. So then we've got the Dark Enlightenment. And
right. The other side of the Antichrist coin. So where does Peter Thiel fit in with Game B?
So Peter Thiel fits in with Game B through like these network states, right? And the Prospera, which is where
living on the islands and stuff.
Yep. So, and network states are not on the island. The whole concept of network states, because the seasteading didn't work, the whole concept of network states is that you would have a dissolution of geographical nation states in favor of ideological network states.
Right.
So through your social media kind of a network or a holochain, which I can't prove it, but I'm pretty sure that Jordan Hall was on the ground floor of this no map technology, because he talks about it sounds exactly like what no map was.
Well, and I'm sure these will be corporations too. The little city state will be its own corporation.
They'll probably be B labs.
Okay. And then you work for them and you live in that city and you worship their mayor.
Not any different than a GovCorp that the Dark Enlightenment's really building, or than the network state concept. It's kind of the same thing, but it's just got a different flavor to it.
Right.
They appeal to different people. They've got different packaging around it, and it's a different sensibility. But yeah, these various, what I try to impress upon people is that I think a lot of people think because it's decentralized, quote unquote, that's their buzzword, DeFi, decentralized, DApp. And I was talking about this no map technology, which talked about changing the name. One of the originators of this no map, which became S7 Foundation, by the way, so the company changed. And then her name was Andrea, and she changed her name to Tam.
Okay.
It just always cracks me up. I'm like, because they all changed their name. Jordan Hall was our Jordan Greenhall. And then he changed his name to Jordan Greenhall, and now he's Jordan Hall. So they all changed their names, but the Andrea to Tan was the funniest to me. But the original company was called No Map, and in it they actually say we're inhabiting the noosphere. So that is the concept, is to create this collective intelligence, this hive mind kind of a, and they do it, again, it's a little bit more social engineering, kind of like, I hesitate to say like brainwashing, but they're culturally steering you. But even Daniel Schmachtenberger says we're going to have to do some social engineering to convince people to get on board with Game B. Jake Ruiz, who was one of the filmmakers on the initiation to Game B, was talking about how he has a Disney project, and he was like, we're going to Trojan horse that Game B right through this project. That's what we have to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm so tired of people, I'm sure you are too, just deciding what is best for everyone.
Well, they think they're gods.
Well, okay, so
they're the spiritually ascended.
Let's talk about that for a second. The profile of these weirdos that think that they know what's good for everybody and everyone's just a dum-dum. I mean, I get it, okay? Like, I get it, but you can't decide what is best for everybody on your own. And what they're trying to do is a coup. Essentially, like dissolve what has been the Constitution. They want to get rid of equal rights. They want to repeal the 19th. This is what I found. Everyone thinks that whole repeal the 19th business that was going around is a new thing. It's not a new thing. So Peter Thiel wrote about this in 2009.
Yeah.
Why he thinks that women getting the vote was bad for democracy. So you thought that came from your favorite Hurley things, but actually this is part.
Coulter was talking about it back then too.
Yeah, was she? Okay, so
yeah. I used to have arguments with Ann Coulter all the time.
But big cultural shocks like
I agreed with
is
her.
What like puts holes in our stability of life and allows them to usher in, it's a problem, reaction, and solution. We're going to take away your vote and then we're going to go to World War III and we're going to just crumble all of it. And then we can plug our own solutions of AI back into it. We're going to make gender wars and Christian wars and all of this stuff and accelerate the decline of everything so that
Yeah.
they can have their utopia, right?
They can, yeah, so they can bring about the apocalypse and immunize the eschaton.
Yes. So he, in that article, it's called The Education of a Libertarian. And that's not very libertarian of him, anyways, to try and like take away people's rights. But, anyways, you were talking about um, freedom cities, is what they're calling them
Yep.
now.
So Freedom City, I did a whole Substack article on this, and I outlined all the different, I could probably pull it up. I outlined all the different kinds of smart cities that there are.
Mm-hmm.
And in it, I also talked about all the technology. So it called it The Path to Mass Surveillance and Technological Singularity. And it's how community planning visions could shape AI-driven future. And so I first go through all of these different types of, surveillance. So we've got, and I'm sure I left out some, but this is the main one. We've got the Internet of Things. Everyone's familiar with that, right? The Internet of Bodies.
Yeah.
Familiar with that, unfortunately. The Internet of Nanobio Things, which the AI World Society talks about how 6G will be the, instrument to connect that. And of course, they talk about humans powering 6G. There's a whole study from Amherst University, right? Amherst, that reveals the capacity of that. So it's like a Black Mirror episode where everybody's on the bikes, powering this.
That's one of the scariest ones.
I know. That was the nightmare stuff. Internet of Behaviors, and there's a whole white paper on the Internet of Behavior, and I think we're living through that through the cybernetic algorithms. I think unfortunately they're really driving that. The Internet of Everything, that's everything's connected.
Mm-hmm.
The Internet of Medical Things, and I think they did a lot of testing with this, a few years ago. The wireless body area networks, the Internet of Industrial Things, and I think we're going to see more and more of this as we get to the last one.
Was it like farm equipment and stuff? Like giant machines?
Yes, it can be. So it can be in like the climate smart commodity projects, but it can also be in robotics, right? It could also be in like assembly line technology, but it's really just industrial applications, connecting the machines that optimize the manufacturing. So then we have the Internet of Smart Cities. And of course, we know the AI World Society has designated Ukraine as a central node to connect all of the C40 cities around the world. This is why they keep saying they do all these symposiums on it. We have to rebuild Ukraine, right? We tore it down, so we have to build it back better. So that was an interesting one. I haven't published this yet, but I saw Jim Rutt, who's the grandfather of Game B. He did a poll about how he's like, what should we do? Should we tear it down? Should we rebuild, or should we create new OS membranes? And I thought it was really interesting because the whole burn it down imagery is like the Phoenix imagery.
Yeah.
And this is actually how I found out about Game B, was because I was looking into Brett Weinstein after he did his Rescue the Republic, a speech. And in the Rescue the Republic speech, he says that, he repeats the famous Ben Franklin line, it's a republic if we can keep it. And he said, it's a republic if we can phoenix it. Which was very strange. Yeah. So I started looking into that, and I think he does really mean it in like the Rosicrucian sense of, the symbolism of burning it down to build back better. And then I looked into, the history of that symbolism. We have Tavistock's Operation Phoenix, right? I had covered that quite a bit. And then we've got obviously Operation Phoenix with the CIA. And this is this is where that slogan, you have to burn down the village to build the village, came from. And then there's actually the centenary of Tavistock. There's a book. I have it in the other room, but it's it's published by Phoenix Publishing. I was like, yeah, okay. But so they talk about these cities all being connected. The C40 cities are one of them, and I'll go through that in a minute, but they're the ones that are geared towards, carbon emissions, and that they have those all over. And we have a bunch of them in the United States already. The Internet of Wearable Things, and I know. The Internet of Robotics is the last one, which I think will become much more relevant in the next few years. But then I'll just quickly go through like all of the technologies and maybe not all, but a lot of them, and then how they're, creating a path to surveillance, and then the singularity risk entails. But one of them is the Freedom City. So I outlined a bunch of different names, and I think they're all just different iterations of exactly the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But Freedom Cities is Trump's branding.
Yeah.
Because who doesn't want to live in a Freedom City? And
well, this is all leaking into the government that we have now. I mean, everyone's
yes.
like thought that we won something, and I'm like, I don't think they're just giving you a different Great Reset than the one that you didn't want.
Yes, I think they're giving us. I think he's really implementing I think he's advancing the technocracy in a way that we wouldn't have been. They wouldn't have been able to through the left because there would have been too much pushback.
Well,
but now they can do it through the GovCorps.
What was that big beautiful bill?
Oh,
not limiting advancements on AI for 10 years. So
yes.
Hopefully Skynet can't build itself in 10 years and enslave us all in the Matrix.
Or let's hope not.
Yeah.
But that was interesting that was what Elon used as his caveat for his exit. He said he thinks that a bill could be big or beautiful, but he's not sure that it could be both.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so speaking of Elon goes back to Peter Thiel because they created PayPal together.
PayPal. Yes.
Right? Which they were trying to make a social media site that would also replace the currency of the US dollar. So yes. Elon has always had this dream to have the digital currency and to call it X. Mm-hmm. So he called several of his companies X, and that's a very esoteric symbol.
Well, have you seen the logo, right? Doesn't it look like an inverted cross?
The logo of Twitter?
On Twitter.
Well, I've seen people like double it and it looks like a compass and square.
Oh.
But I mean, if you want to, I've said this a million times, I'm sure people are sick of hearing it, but according to Kenneth Grant, the O and the X is the mark of the beast.
Yeah. So, well, he says that he wants to create WeChat, but better, right? He wants it to be the everything app. Mm-hmm. He has his new logo, which looks like Saturn, but he claims that it's the event horizon.
Oh, okay. The Grok Saturn? Okay.
But it looks like Saturn, and I think that's really what's going on. Yeah.
Well, Saturn is a huge part of the occult, which the Dark Enlightenment, that's a more occulted side than the Game B side. So like you were saying, Game B.
I think they're both very occult. I just think that the Game B side is more occult in the theosophical.
Like New Agey. Yeah.
New Age, yes.
Okay.
I heard a conversation with, and I'm blanking on who. I think it was Wernicke and McGilchrist and either Schmachtenberger or Hall. I think it was Schmachtenberger. But they kept talking about how we owe everything to Spinoza. Mm-hmm. Spinoza, who, the whole concept of monism and everything is one. And it's a very pantheistic, they would call it panentheistic, but it's still.
So your Dr. Bronner's Screed soap, right? That kind of, all is one.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
All is one. And so Game B very much operates under that. And they, they're more, they call it collective intelligence, and they're, so they're operating. I think it is still very occult. There are a lot of Kabbalistic kind of concepts in there. Mm-hmm. It's very much theosophical in nature. It's neoplatonic. But I think it's just more of that flavor, whereas the Dark Enlightenment is a little bit more of the kind of overt, more darker kind of esoteric occult.
Okay.
Like Julius Evola is a big influence on the Dark Enlightenment.
And so we just went from Game B to Peter Thiel to Dark Enlightenment starts with Curtis Yarvin. and
Nick Land.
Nick Land and their little institute.
Cybernetic Culture Research Unit at Warwick University.
Okay.
Yes.
So this thing, if you just Wikipedia CCRU, right? I'm going to do that right now.
It's dark.
Well,
it's weird.
It's so crazy because the first name associated with this is actually a woman named Sadie Plant.
Sadie Plant. Yep, Nick Land and Sadie Plant.
And she was a British philosopher, cultural theist, author, work in cyber feminism. So I don't know if you've ever watched Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I did. I used to say it was the role made for me. They should have found me, and so I did not audition. Yeah.
But there's a lot of truth to that.
I had no idea it was such feminist propaganda until years later. But yeah, I enjoyed it at the time.
But it's fun to watch because it was like super Y2K. It was the right as we were coming of age and right on the cusp of like computers in school. And there was this character named Mrs. Calendar, I think, and she was like a technocracy, and she was really cool because like she was introducing mystical stuff into computers, like what we're talking about right now, the CCRU. So basically, you have this lady, Sadie, what was her name? Sadie Plant, a cyber feminist, and who was trying to figure out how to use the internet for equality, right? Which is something that they're not really trying to do anymore. Egalitarianism is not really on the docket anymore.
No,
it's going to be a very stratified place if the technocrats get what they want.
So this is the big difference. Like, I think Game B presents itself as being very egalitarian because it's grassroots, it's decentralized. But like, who's behind all of who's going to be running these network states, right? So I don't think it is
the priestcraft of the technocracy.
Exactly.
Right, techno-priest.
But whereas the Dark Enlightenment, they're more in your face about it. They're authoritarian. They claim that it's going to be a CEO who's going to be, in fact, Curtis Yarvin actually said that if America wants to, improve their government, they need to get over their fear of dictatorship. He literally said that.
Right. And Curtis Yarvin is Peter Thiel's most important connection. Peter Thiel called him that. So he's a very respected philosopher in the genre. So right back to cybernetic culture research, it's like Scooby-Doo with computers, like gothic horror, esotericism, numerology, demonology, occult systems, and surreal narratives.
Yes, I wonder if I can find this. It was kind of like, I think I had to way back it, but they had this it was like Xeno Cyber something that was connected to the Cybernetic Research Unit when I looked it up, and it was so strange.
Xeno Cyber. So here it's saying Nick Land referred to it as the experimental technoscience of self-fulfilling prophecies. So like introducing memes, and this goes back to how they think that Donald Trump won the first election with Keck and 4chan and Pepe the Frog.
Right. Yes.
Which then became a symbol for racism, which some of these technocrats are definitely in that.
Oh, they're racist. They're like Nazis. They're like neo-Nazis, essentially.
Right.
Yes.
So you said something about a Peter Thiel party, I think, or somebody did.
Peter Thiel.
Oh, the elves. Okay. So I had somebody told me they went to a Peter Thiel party and it was Matrix themed plus 7 deadly sins.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, so I've heard Peter Thiel recently talking about, so he at Stanford, like one of his mentors was Girard, the structuralist philosopher who's supposedly rooted in Christian metaphysics, although it's a little fuzzy to me because it's kind of, again, like his whole theory is about mimetic culture and how, like, we all mimic each other, and so essentially it becomes like a collectivist fighting each other. So it's a little strange, but he said, oh wait, I think I might have found it. No. Yeah, but in it, he was talking about how like we mimic, because he keeps saying that Gerard talks about the Ten Commandments and that the most important ones are the first and the last. And so the first one is, no idolatry, only, one God. And then the last one is do not covet. And so he talks about how, but by nature, we're covetous. And that's part of the mimetic theory, is that like we mimic and then like we'll, compete.
Monkey see, monkey
But
do.
yes, exactly.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
that was really interesting because Elon, I think it was last night, he said the singularity's already happened. Look at the monkeys.
Oh gosh.
But yeah, but what was interesting in this point when he was talking about do not covet, he was saying how all the others, he's like all sins have some sort of virtue in them. Like they've already been rebranded. And he talked about like greed was one of the ones he used as an example.
Mhm.
Kind of like, I guess, like Adam Smith's kind of Mandeville kind of concept of like, greed has its virtue because it's,
Well,
creates ambition. And
that was the moral of Wall Street, the movie. Remember with or
yeah,
what was his name?
yeah. The Wolf of
Gordon
Wall
Gekko.
Street.
Yeah. So yeah, all the Wall Street greed is good because it.
Yeah. So he said, but the only one they haven't addressed is this coveting, and they
Mhm.
haven't figured out how to, how to virtuize that. I'm
Mm.
paraphrasing. That's essentially what he said. And he's like, so it must be a really big deal. that's must be a really. So that's interesting that he has the sins in this party. Yeah,
Right.
and then the elves. Yeah, so that's Curtis Yarvin's concept of the dark elves, and
Okay, let me pull
I
this up. Hold on. Your tweet
okay.
about the dark elves because it had me laughing. Because they're all such dorks. I mean, that's what we are.
Well,
They're
and the fact that they're being like touted as these great philosophers, like I really encourage people to actually read Nick Land and Curtis Yarvin. I mean, just even a little bit. This is not great writing. Like this is
mm.
really just trash.
And
This is not great philosophy.
he's the philosophical influencer of JD Vance, right?
Yes, he is. That's
Okay.
right.
So the role of the dark elf, and this is about Curtis Yarvin and his stuff, right? To win the
Yes.
culture war with subversive power by seducing the higher elves to relinquish their institutions, which is what religions and what he calls the cathedral, which is like
Yes.
society, the way it is now.
Yeah. So cathedral is kind of like the institution. So like the academic institutions and the media, journalism. Yeah.
So what is this that you were
What
screenshotting? The goal of the dark elves to become
So this is from his, and you'll find this really interesting.
uh-huh.
This is from his blog. So he's got a couple of blogs. He's got the unqualified reservations, which is very long. And
Mhm.
I was up way too late looking for this horrific quote. And I could probably read that one to you too. I can find that. But it was, I'll paraphrase it for you for now. It's essentially where he talks about the humane alternative to genocide would be to virtualize people. This
Mhm.
is the most like insidious thing like ever. It took me a really long time because on his unqualified reservations blog, it's not there. It's not public anymore. I had to way back it, but I didn't find it. So I found the exact quote. It's on page 22 of his uh, patchwork something like an introduction to patchworks.
Okay.
But anyway, so that's his one. That's one blog that he did that he started in 2008. Then he's got another one that's on Substack, and it's called Gray Mirror.
Okay.
So not Black Mirror, it's Gray Mirror.
And this is about American coup, right? Gray mirror?
Huh?
Like a coup or no?
Yeah, well, he's got a lot of different blogs on there,
Uh-huh.
like a lot of different articles. It's basically his Substack. But on there in the Gray Mirror, he talks about. So he has this concept about the dark elves, and it's one of the articles that he wrote. I'll see if I can pull that
Okay.
one.
So the dark elves are the technocrats?
So the dark elves essentially are, yeah, I would say they are the technocrats. So what what I was pointing out was that I think it's very much a signal to the initiated when Elon had his dark MAGA hat.
Yeah.
So we've got the dark MAGA and then we've got elite MAGA. And what Yarvin talks about is how we have to subvert the culture, right?
Yeah.
He said that we have to subvert it through seduction.
Okay.
And so and he says that the dark elves have to seduce the higher elves. So how I interpreted that is that he's saying the dark MAGA, right? This is the dark Enlightenment, dark MAGA who have infiltrated, need to seduce the elite MAGA, which is the higher elves. And that way they can, create this subversive movement in order to usher in their GovCorp.
And who are the hobbits?
The hobbits?
It says, before this revolution, hobbits and dark elves should have nothing to do with the other. The goal of the dark elves is to win the culture war, but not with hobbit power. In fact, the less a dark elf smells like a hobbit, the better. Just let us take care of it.
So he says it right here. He says, we know who are the hobbits and who are the elves. We know who's on top and who's on bottom. Of dwarfs and orcs we shall not speak. We know what the elves want. They want to live beautiful lives. We know what the hobbits want. They want to grill and raise kids. So it sounds like the hobbit are the MAGA. But dear hobbitess, dear hobbits, you can only lose the culture war. Even when elves use political power to impose elf culture on you, you cannot use political power to impose hobbit culture on elves. So I think the hobbit are the, like kind of more MAGA traditional, the people who think that they're really more conservative, classical conservative.
He says,
yeah.
The only culture war that matters is the culture war between the dark elves and the high elves.
Yep. Exactly. So they're the dark elves, right? This is the dark Enlightenment.
And it's so crazy because MAGA is a station in the Satanic Church.
Yeah. Yeah.
Magus.
Yes. Yes. Right. And wasn't Doge was also like a magistrate.
And so many of these things are taken from fantasy. Not that that's a bad thing, but it's like they warn us about not living in reality. Like you need to spend most of your time in a real world, not a sim thing that you think you can just knock down like a baby in a sandcastle and build a new one, right? These are people's lives. These are people's ancestries. These are people's entire, like, it's just, it makes me mad how they think that everyone is just a toy that they can.
They do. I mean, it really is game theory. I mean, hence the name Game B, right?
We're all just Sims, but
exactly. Yeah. So, and I mean, most of these people have said we're in a simulation. They actually believe that we're already in a simulation. So we're just.
And that's what the AI is like starting to tell people. Like we're getting more and more stories about like AI told me to unalive myself, or told me to unalive my parents, or whatever, or told me to run away, and it only loves me, or that I'm a god. So people are slipping out of reality into literally like the Matrix through the seduction of this AI.
And he talks about this. I think Curtis Yarvin does. Let me see if I can find this. I had shown screenshots of that actually, where he makes many references to the Matrix in his unresolved reservations, and he says like we all know the Matrix, and he's making a homage to the Matrix in his blog. So
and not only that, in their stupid little disease.
And he says they're the red pills, by the way.
Oh yeah, that's true. He was the first one to say the red pill, right? Mm-hmm. In reference to like the cabal or whatever, the New World Order.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody was talking about a party, a Lord of the Rings party, and how it was just like a bunch of smelly dorks dressed up like elves, and they think that they're the dark elves and that everyone else is a hobbit. It's just all so tiresome sometimes.
Yeah. Well, it's very elitist, right? They all think, and this is what I really was trying to point out, because you've got this framing and it's just different flavors of the same thing. But
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, you've got one side, where they have this theosophical view that the spiritually ascended, right? Those who have achieved conscious evolution, they're the ones who should rule. It's
Mm-hmm.
basically spiritual eugenics. That's the theosophical kind of viewpoint. That's Game B. The other people are just, they're just not going to make it. So, and then you have on the other side, you've got these dark Enlightenment folks and the, Curtis Yarvin and Peter Thiel and Nick Land, and they're talking about creating a hierarchical system, and very overtly, where it
Mm-hmm.
is intentionally stratified
Mm-hmm.
and where you're run by a dictatorship in a government corp. And this is what's also concerning, because both sides have, air of deception for those who are not, paying attention to it. But I think on the dark enlightenment side, I think a lot of people think that all this privatization is, libertarian, right? It's a freedom, it's laissez-faire, and that's how they see it. What they don't realize is there's no accountability. There's very little transparency. And it means that the corporations are going to become the government. They're taking over. So now you're basically just handing over from a government to, a like Silicon Valley, billionaire tech oligarchs. And that's not necessarily going to be more freedom for you.
Another goal of theirs is a state-run media, right? So
Yep.
first you have to go in and
Have
make
that.
everyone distrust legacy media, right?
Right.
Established ABC, NBC, Fox, CNN, BBC, they're all floundering. And then you have all of your weirdo agents flood the airwaves with a bunch of nonsense,
Yep.
right? And get people fighting and hating each other, and so that you can offer them these solutions of technocracy.
And now we've got the White House is doing their own network, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had definitely concerns about that. That seems a little, I mean, I don't want any state-run media.
Well,
What
and
happens if it's someone you don't like their politics, right?
right. Well, and it's also a very Crowleyan, like socials Darwinian, the slaves shall serve. So anybody, a hobbit or an orc or whoever you like want to label them as, like,
Yep.
whatever creature of Narnia.
Right.
So he says here about this dark elves, he says, once the elite was corrupted with Western doctrines, once it lost its unswerving faith in the socialist future, it and the regime it powered were doomed. So the goal of the dark elves is to become and remain influential in narrow circles to accumulate prestige, a secret prestige. And then he talks about how this method was tested by Freemasons.
Yep. Right. And isn't that's actually, yeah. And I mean, the Freemasons, I would argue, we'll just put it this way: the Illuminati infiltrated the Freemasons, right?
Yeah.
And Adam Weishaupt specifically says that he took this model of secrecy and hierarchical structure
Mm-hmm.
from the Jesuits, because he said that he recognized, he was trained at Ingolstadt and he was a professor of canon law, and he said that he recognized that it worked as clout. So that people, took kind of pride in that initiation, having the secret, and
Mm-hmm.
so it created that kind of order. So yeah, that is interesting. But this is that they're both operating from the same thing, right? Because what do we have? Didn't Alice Bailey? I put a whole bunch of screenshots of her saying very much the same thing, that the Freemasons were going to be, the operating system to combat Christianity, and that we should infiltrate Christianity and operate the way the Freemasons do, and that they were going to be the conduit essentially to create the one world religion.
I would encourage everyone to get a couple books about cults, just like objective
Cults.
like studies about how cults are run, because this is basically all of these influencers. It's just micro cults, and they always follow the same pattern. Like you said, one of the hallmarks of a cult is like, we have a secret that no one else knows, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And their secret is going to be what? Access to the AI? Do you think they're just going to be like gooning out in the cyberspace with getting tickled by AI, or what? Like, have you heard any reports of their initiations or anything like that?
I think that they're going to do a lot of carrot dangling. And I'm already kind of seeing it. So some of it is in that longevity, transhuman space. And this is not going to be popular. And this is not a judgment on people who do like, plastic surgery or longevity kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it's a transhuman agenda. And I think it's desensitizing people. I think that was part of what the transgender was also about,
Mm-hmm.
is a transhuman movement. But so I think a lot of people are already kind of bought into a lot of this life extension kind of technology. And of course, for the elite, for the initiated, they're going to get the best of the best. Have you seen Larry Ellison? He's 80 years old. Oh my gosh, he looks like he's in his 40s. I don't know if I want to know even how he achieved that. And I'm not saying there's, we all want to look our best. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm not sure I want to know how he really looks like he's in his 40s and he's 80. And
the recipe for Limbus bread, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And we get jacked into the matrix.
Yes. And then I think they're also dangling this carrot of, they're doing it. You already see it with the chips, right? They're talking about how you're going to have access to all this knowledge, the gnosis, right? You're going to have unlimited knowledge. You'll have so much capacity because you could, you just think a question, you'll have all the answers. And they're already talking about that as being like a way to entice people into doing the chip.
Mm-hmm.
And I say the chip because Neuralink is obviously the one that's been very popularized. But I mean, in Sweden, there are many people have already opted in, like tens of thousands are already doing the chip. BlackRock has their chip.
Mm-hmm.
This is, not exclusive to Elon.
Well,
but they talk about how you're going to be connected. You'll be able to share somebody else's feelings. Like you'll actually not just have empathy, you'll really experience it firsthand.
so speaking of Buffy, Joss Whedon had another show that didn't run very long, but we've seen every episode because it's about MK Ultra mind control. It was called Dollhouse. And one of the things in that show was they could upload and download different personalities via like a chair or something that they sat in and got electrocuted. But their agents could be anyone. So they were just like a blank slate, and they took them out of the little pod and they put them in the chair, and they could upload you. Now you know karate, or now you know 10 languages, or now you are this person or that person. And like, so it was a prototype of what you're talking about, swapping out data, instantly uploading and downloading things right into your brain.
Wow. Yeah, well, we're definitely seeing a lot of predictive programming for that. We saw, was it Mickey 17? And this.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Okay, it's like he keeps dying.
Uh-huh.
So, and then being brought back to life. So, yeah, I think that's going to be definitely a theme. I mean, they're already doing it with Infinita, which was Vitalia. They're doing that marketing anyway, yeah. But they keep saying you'll upload your consciousness to the cloud, and then you'll live forever.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Thiel says, because they were asking him if he thinks this is compatible with Christianity, and he said, by the way, he says freedom is no longer compatible with democracy, he says. But he said that he thinks that it is compatible with Christianity because it would never be framed as like you take a pill and live forever. It's going to be framed in helping people. It'll be like, we'll cure cancer, we'll cure this disease, we'll cure Alzheimer. And I'm like, so is he just saying the quiet part out loud that they're using that as a cover? I don't know. It was a little interesting to me.
It's hard to watch people fall for the same stuff. Like, oh, this will cure cancer. Yeah, right. They have never cured cancer. They wouldn't even, why would they? Or Alzheimer's, why don't you stop?
Or they've like arrested and taken out doctors who did have success.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, never invent a free energy device or discover a cure for cancer because it's like nice knowing you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But give us more money and we'll figure it all out. Don't worry.
So this neo-reactionary accelerationism, putting dark elves into the mix, subversive people. Oh, Palantir. That's the last thing I wanted to say about Peter Thiel because that's all about surveillance.
Yeah.
And
surveillance.
that is another scary topic when we're talking about libertarianism and freedom is like total surveillance is not part of that.
Well, the Patriot Act was very patriotic. I mean, it's in the name.
Oh, right.
Obviously.
But Palantir is like can you explain? It's like the panopticon, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It is. And they have defense contracts. So they've worked with the military. They were part of the total information awareness project. That's actually that was under Bill Clinton. That's actually where we got the GPS from.
Okay.
It became public because, what they were doing was a violation of the Fourth Amendment.
Interesting.
So they declassified, yeah.
So last thing I want to talk about, because we're going on 2 hours and I'm so interested in this subject now because it's unfolding exactly the way they want. Donald Trump, an American Caesar, or the Trump family? Do you see because monarchy is a big part of this, and that's interesting because in the Orthodox Church, we are pro monarchy. We're also pro other governments. It's like we can exist in lots of different forms of government and just be fine as Christians, but they are pro monarchy if the monarch is, a righteous person. We're not like tyrannical reigners. Right. We like to call Jay that, but no, we're trying to walk the, straight path between anarchy and tyranny. And you can have a successful culture and civilization under a monarchy if the monarchs are righteous people. What do you think?
Well, they're definitely in favor of monarchy, but they're in favor of like a dictatorship type of monarchy.
So they're on the tyranny side.
They're on the tyranny side, and they're pretty overt about it. I mean, they're not. So the Game B people would not advocate monarchy. They're all about decentralization. They're much more covert. I think the analogy that I think might resonate for you. The way I kind of see it is it's just an analogy. I don't want to get like hit over the head with this, but I kind of feel like the Dark Enlightenment are kind of like overt Satanists, and the Game B are a little bit more like Luciferians. I always say I actually find Luciferians to be more concerning because it's like the dark, it's dark.
Right.
Okay, I know what I'm dealing with, right? So it's like, okay, that's dark. I may not like it, but like I know I got it. I know what I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
The love and light crowd, it's like I don't know what I'm getting into. And it's like the thing I always bring up is the World Invocation Day prayer. And by the way, the Centennial Conclave is coming up in a couple of and they call it the Luciferian Conclave, but this is on World Invocation Day. But if you've read that prayer, at the very end, it says to seal the door where evil dwells. And I'm always so creeped out because they don't say what side they're sealing the door.
Oh, right.
I'm like, wait, are we locked in with evil? I don't understand. They did not clarify.
Yeah.
So, but I feel like, so the Game B they would not advocate for monarchy. They're advocating for decentralized. They claim it's very egalitarian. It's grassroots. They claim it's bottom up. But they use terms like digital sovereignty, and I just don't know how that's possible. And even, as I said, Balaji Srinivasan says that they will re-centralize. And a lot of these technologies are talking about it being interoperable, which means that it has to have some sort of a central locus. And even if it didn't, in communitarianism, you still need digital ID. You're still in like a tokenized economy. So, you have fractionalization, which they advocate, right? They claim that this is, and I always joke about this because you'd love to think that you could have shared assets with your loved ones and your family members, but there's a reason that estate lawyers exist. It doesn't always quite work out that way. But somehow with complete strangers in your community, in your digital community, you're going to own fractional assets, and this is all just going to work out fine and dandy. And like, just think about if you were in a, let's just say you're in a like vegan network state or civium or whatever, and you go and you have a steak one night, like how is that going to work out for you? Are they still going to let you in? Like, does your digital ID still work?
Right.
I know I'm using a silly example, but people seem to think just because it's small groups that it's not tyrannical. So that's the Game B side. So they would not overtly.
Well, and they could lock you into your city.
Yeah, geofencing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then the Dark Enlightenment crew, they're very overt about it. They openly say they want a GovCorp. So they talk about how the president should really be a CEO. And they should operate that way. And they say, and Curtis Yarvin says the CEO is essentially a dictator of the company, that this is the company. And they have a concept called rage. And you'll see in some of these videos where Curtis Yarvin speaks, he has a poster that says rage right behind him. What rage stands for is retire all government employees. And so this is really implementing the vision of the technate. So the technate was this concept from Technocracy Inc., which, remember, Josh Hadelman was Elon Musk's grandfather from 1936 to 1943. He was the head of Technocracy Inc. in Canada.
Yeah, we did a show about that called Elon Musk's Slippery Sorcery. That was like 2 or 3 years ago, before he even did Doge or Dark Manga or anything like that. I'm like, look at this character. I don't trust this guy. So,
yeah, you were on it. I'll have to catch that. Yeah. So a lot of people will push back and say he didn't know his grandfather well because his grandfather passed when he was young, but he was very familiar with these concepts of technocracy. And he keeps talking about how he wants to build technocracy on Mars, but what he's really doing is building technocracy here. And I think he was hoping to do that in part of the Trump administration. I don't know what happened, but there's speculation that they were investigating some of his companies, and lots of taxpayer dollars have gone into that one, so into many of them. So all the defense contracts that he has with every single one of his companies, that's rolling out the fourth industrial revolution, although they claim we're already in the fifth industrial revolution. They've mapped out the sixth and seventh. But the rage, retire all government employees, is so you get rid of government. They don't want politicians. They want AI to take over. So back in 1930s, they were trying to create a solution for the Depression and come up with an economic solution. This is where they came up with this concept of the technocracy. They didn't have the technology that we have today. They didn't have AI, right? So they were really just talking about rule by the experts, rule by, the scientific elite and the engineers, and have it be very mechanistic, but do away with the political class, because the political class was a little bit too democratic, and it was too connected to, the people. This should really be ruled by mechanism. And so that was the concept. And if you look at it, it has a lot of occult roots. They were, working with the Nazis. Their symbol was the yin yang, which, yes, it's Taoist, but it's also Kabbalistic, right? That unity of the opposites, incorporating the dark and the light. There were a lot of esoteric kind of symbolism in the technocracy back then. And certainly today, I think a lot of what we see, as I said, Julius Evola was a huge influence on Nick Land and his accelerationist. And they also all talk about drugs, kind of like a psychedelic type drugs for transcendent experiences. And both sides do, both of them, because this is all about connecting with source, right? The one. Yeah.
Well, so Nick Land and this accelerationism, and I think that's a word a lot of people need to get familiar with, because that's what's kind of fueling the collapse, like the racial tensions, the men and women tensions, the immigration stuff. So we're going to leave it here, because that goes straight into the dark woods where the orcs live. And right? With the I mean, even Jay has done a show about this last year on InfoWars with BX about the Order of the Nine Angles and the accelerationists and the online cults and
Yep.
groups, right?
Yeah.
So if you want more on that, I recommend Isaac on. Yeah, go ahead.
I will just add they're also like they're very much advocating for like the ethno state. So this is where all the racial stuff comes in, and
Right.
you see a lot of this playing out in a lot of the online kind of battles, you know. So yeah.
Yes. So Isaac on Tripoli, and then he did the 5 parts on Dark Enlightenment, and then Courtenay did some really good shows on Game B. What were those titled on your channel?
Oh, so I've done I think 8 at the moment, but
Oh, wow. Okay.
some of yeah, I've done a lot of work on the Game B just because the only people talking about Game B are people in it who are like proponents of it. There's very few people talking about it, you know, who aren't like advocating for it. So, and like I said, it's not new at all. But
and it's so crazy how it ties into what we were talking about last year about the UN and the
so most
vortex.
of them are.
Yeah.
Yes. Most of them have UN connection. They're all in with the climate narrative. They claim we're in a meta crisis. My husband and I have a joke that when we listen to Jordan Hall, that if you took a shot every time he says metasystemic, you'd be very at the end.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's so I've done a lot of, you know, just kind of trying to unpack this. They are very connected to UN because Barbara Marx Hubbard, right? Barbara Marx Hubbard was tied to like Robert Mueller, all of those characters, the UN. So yeah, I guess I did one on the civium. I did one, the Dark Enlightenment and Game B, left, right, dialectic, building the technocracy. The one that gives the most comprehensive overview was a presentation. It's 3.5 hours long, but I did a presentation for the Rising Tide Foundation, and it was called Game B, Building the Noosphere. And so that gives you kind of like a overall. But yeah, I think I've done 8 now. So.
Well, very good. Every time I have crazy technocracy stuff, I always think of Courtenay to explain it to me because you know way about these terms and people than I do. So
it's really funny. So somebody reached out to me apparently who had like a personal connection to one of the figures who's involved in this space, like the transpolitical space. And he said, he was like, I don't understand like any of what they're saying, but it seems like it's lingo.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Courtenay
like,
knows the lingo.
Yeah, that's what he said. He's like, you're in on the lingo. I'm like,
yeah,
I apparently have spent too long in this world. So.
Well, Decoding Technocrats with Courtenay Turner. Thanks, you guys. This was such a great show. Your address is Courtenay Turner Podcast. What is it called?
Yes, so CourtenayTurner.com is probably the best place to find me.
Okay.
I spell my name like Courtenay, so it is pronounced Courtenay, but it's spelled Courtenay, so it's COURTENAY.com. And yeah, that's probably the best place to find me. Also, my Substack is a good if you want to read some of my stuff.
And you're on Rockfin too as well, right?
I am no longer on Rockfin.
Oh, okay.
I did like a massive purge. So
okay.
I was
Rumble?
I'm on Rumble. Yeah, okay. I'm on Rumble. I'm on like every audio platform possible. I'm on BitChute, Rumble. I am on YouTube again, but it's just the previews. So, and not every episode can go up there because they don't always have friendly policies.
Right. All right. Well, we'll roll the YouTube dice and see how this one goes. And thank you so much. You are a lovely guest as usual. And next time we will be back with Ruckus about being a sim, and Donut about mystery schools. So we'll see you soon. Thanks so much.
Awesome.
Bye.
Hey, thank you.